Welcome to episode 271 of Control the Controllables. And today we have Jody Maginley. Now, Jody is a professional doubles player. He's 211 in the world currently. He's also the co-founder of the Changeover Podcast. And he's got a great story. He comes from Antigua, 90,000 people in the population of Antigua, and he's made his way to the upper echelons of our sport. He's a great guy. He went to college, so he's got that story. He's come out. He's now, really fighting on the tour. He's gradually picked up his first ATP Challenger title earlier this year. In the last couple of weeks, he's also made a final, another semi-final, and he's slowly but surely making his way through the rankings. We get into kind of talking about many different things. It's 2025. Is this the new way that you approach tennis? Is it just people that are playing tennis and making their money from hitting tennis balls? Or is there alternative ways to fund our tennis? We've had a few people now coming on the podcast and talking about that. And I just want to open everyone's mind to those possibilities. He's a good dude, great conversation. I'm sure you're going to enjoy this one, and pass you over to Jody. So, Jody Maginley, a big welcome to Control the Controllables. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me, and thanks to August Holmgren for connecting us.
Yeah, well, you'll see. I hope you've got your one ready because you'll get asked at the end. Who's going to be our next guest on the podcast. You were handed over. So actually starting there, what's your link up with August?
I think I met him this summer, actually. I had an idea who he was before. Obviously, he played college tennis, and I don't know if we actually played any tournaments before this summer, but I met him maybe in Winnipeg or Granby or one of the U.S. tournaments, and then we ended up spending a lot of time together, having dinner, having lunches. I warmed him up maybe for a match here or there, and yeah, like I said, spent a lot of time, and I respect him a lot in his game and his work ethic. So yeah, I guess we kind of connected that way.
And what a summer he had, eh? What a grass court season that he had. That was
Yeah.
quite incredible.
Yeah, I saw him. I think I met him right after that, so it would have been like when he was on a high, and I guess he was going through a little bit of some health things. I don't even know if I consider it health things, but maybe hydration issues because he was playing like
Yeah.
some long physical matches in the heat, and he was like throwing up a little bit. I don't know if that's too much information for the listeners, but yeah, it was interesting to hear him try and work through that problem, like because you would see him pounding like electrolytes and water and stuff, and he would play. Obviously, he's very aggressive and plays with intent, but in the heat and long matches, I guess he was working through that problem. So it was cool to see him in that process, I guess.
And an unbelievably humble guy as well, because with August, so one of my really close friends is August's coach.
Okay.
And actually speaking to August, Freddie Nielsen, who won Wimbledon back in 2012 and in doubles, and he's now the Davis Cup captain for Denmark. And speaking to August, I literally felt I was talking to Freddie. It was, they have this just, I don't know if it's a bit of a Danish thing, apart from Holger Rune. Holger doesn't quite have that same, he's the most Danish person of all time, Holger Rune, I think. But, they just have a very calm, humble way about them, a great outlook. I'm just going to keep working hard. My opportunities will come, and boy, did they come at Wimbledon this year, and I'm sure he'll build on it. And I guess as a tennis player, Jody, and we're going to jump into your story, but, someone who, from Antigua, from a small country, not a place that you would necessarily think of tennis players, right? But it's, when you see these stories on the tour like August, what do those stories do to someone like yourself in terms of just giving you that bit of extra belief, inspiration that, maybe all of this hard work and all of this doubt and all of this difficulty, there's some potential light at the end of the tunnel?
Yeah, I mean, I think my answer is gonna surprise you a little bit, but my country is so small. My island is so small. It's
Yeah.
100,000 people max. Like I would say it's like between 90 and 100,000 people. So even a story like Val Vacherot from Monaco, or like you said, like August and all these guys, I think that with respect to them, obviously, I'm not taking anything away, but I still think they have a lot more playing opportunities and opportunities to develop their game a lot more than us in the Caribbean. So for me, like when I was growing up, I thought Darian was spectacular, Darian King, and he was the guy that I looked up to the most. And I think when I was going to school, Darian might have been in the 200-300s, and then by the time I was in college and graduating, that's when he was getting into the 100s and starting to, you know, push into the masters and the slams and playing slam qualies. I think right after school was when he qualied at US Open and played Zverev. So this was the guy I looked up to because I can relate the most to him because I know how little playing opportunities he had in Barbados. And granted, they're a little bit bigger than us, but compared to a lot of these other European countries, and like we discussed about August and Val, like maybe they're not from the big tennis nations, but it's still a lot bigger than where we're from. So yeah, Darren is the guy that I looked up to the most.
And tell us, because I had Jules Roger on the show a few weeks ago, and Jules is a good friend of mine. Obviously, Curacao and is a very small island as well. But you know, I think probably similar story to you. Ended up spending time in Florida. You know, seems to be the way. But what when I spoke to Jules and I said like, what were your tennis playing opportunities like when you got started? And it was mind blowing. It was like I wish my kids could hear that, and I wish kids that I know in Europe could hear that. You know, the things that he would do just to get any type of tennis action at all were just quite incredible. So tell us, go back. I know it's not that long, but
Yeah.
mid nineties you were born. You know, going back to that time back in Antigua. Firstly, how do you get into tennis?
I guess it started when I was young. So first of all, my dad played. So that's how I got into tennis. My dad
Right.
played
Okay.
competitive tennis, and I guess back then it would have been like the lower to mid levels of professional tennis. But I don't know how much playing opportunities my dad had again, like back in the day. But when I was growing up, tennis wasn't the only love for me. Like I enjoyed playing tennis, but I also enjoyed being with my friends. So I enjoyed playing cricket because it was a team sport. I can be with all of my friends in the field. Like I was actually really small, so I didn't like the more physical sports like football. Like I would just never get the ball, and it just wasn't for me. So I played cricket, I played tennis, and I balanced those both until like my mid teenage years before I started getting advice like, you know, you have to kind of pick one. And I guess I picked tennis. And yeah, I guess growing up 15, 16, I went to a normal high school. I was playing tennis after school every day, and the accessibility is not that great. Actually, we played at a resort, and you can only have certain hours because obviously the guest for the resort has priority. So if we have four courts at the resort and there's guests on all four courts, there's no tennis today. So that's kind of how we grew up. I had a coach there in Antigua, and I guess by my last year in high school, I was pretty focused on education. My mom was pretty strict on education, so I wasn't playing that much tennis. So then I took 1 year off to do a year of online school, and I trained in Florida for a bit, just getting ready. And
Yep.
obviously, college is where I wanted to go, and I think it's a great opportunity for a lot of tennis players. I was definitely not anywhere close to being pro level. So I went that route. I played college tennis. I played 4 years at like a small mid major school, and I improved a lot my senior year. And then I was lucky to get in contact with Taylor Dent.
Okay.
He came to Antigua 1 year to do like a Christmas event with a group of people, and that's how we connected. I learned he had an academy, and my senior year I connected with him, and I moved to Texas to train with him, and I had a great experience there, and I improved a lot from my senior year in college to my first couple of years on tour with Taylor. I improved a lot, and that kind of transitioned to eventually I moved to Florida with a different coach, and here I am today now playing doubles full time.
Did he teach you how to serve?
Funny enough, his dad is known for the serve. His dad's a serve doctor. I think that all of them are great coaches. Actually, Phil is a great coach. Taylor and his wife Jenny is a great coach as
Right.
well.
Okay.
And actually, I guess serving is my strength, so I didn't need as much work on the serve. I wasn't really struggling with the serve, but there are other areas that I definitely spent a lot of time with him on. But it's funny because his philosophy is not what you would think it would be, because I guess his idea is the things that he was really good at he didn't value as much in today's game. I don't know if that's changed in the last couple of years, but when I was training there, so there wasn't as much emphasis on things like volleying. It was more like you take a lot of risk on the ground stroke and maybe the approaches, and then the volley would just be like a put away volley. So we spent a lot of time working on mid court balls, serve and first balls, that sort of stuff. He didn't really believe that the game was evolving into a game that you can like chip backhand. So because I guess he did a lot, and his slice was obviously one of the best in the world at the time, but he was was of the belief that you have to be really good on both wings. You have to be balanced in your game. So we spent a lot of time working on, I guess, what you see guys like Sinner doing now, like really good serving first ball, but also defending. You're not like running and chipping and just hanging the ball short. So whether you agree with it or not, I don't know, but I'm just saying that's what we spent a lot of time
Right.
on working with him in my years in Texas with him.
Well, I get PTSD when you mention Taylor Dent because I've still got a bruise around about here. It's like a Slazenger Wimbledon ball imprinted
Okay.
in my rib cage. I played him in the juniors
Okay.
in at Roehampton the week before Junior Wimbledon, and he was ranked pretty high. I think he was probably one of the top seeds in the junior event, and I was a decent player. I was better at doubles probably than singles, but I was a good player. I was top 10 in the world in doubles because I used to have separate rankings, and then singles I step on court, and we're on one of the top courts. They used to have these top courts at Roehampton. Windy day, and whatever happened, I made a big error because I allowed him to serve with the wind in the first in the first game, in the first point of the match, and he steps up to the line, and this thing just came at me, and I'd never, age 17, I don't think I'd ever seen, to the point where I just didn't move. I don't even think I made a move, and it just hit the grass court, and then just absolutely body slammed me. Like this thing, I was like, "What was that?" That
Yeah,
I've just,
Taylor.
I mean, wow,
Yeah,
and,
he has
and
an absolute rocket, and he even in training, like he would not warm up, not he'd just be coaching, and he's showing you the tip on the serve, and he just absolutely explode one. And in Texas, they have at their facility they have 10 outdoors and 5 indoors, and when it's indoors, you just hear the ball cracking through the facility, like it's unbelievable.
No, that was not. I mean, he basically won the match with that one serve. The rest of the match, I'm thinking, I think I might have got a set somehow, but it was like I almost didn't want him to make his serve, so I could. It was absolutely incredible. We sing the praises of US college a lot on this podcast. I'm a big advocate of US college. Your story already tells me it gave you a stepping stone, right? It gave you that kind of 4 years opportunity to go and develop. I want to come at it a bit of a different view. What could college do better? We know that they do a great job and there's lots of good things, but when you relive your experiences, there's something that you think, actually, it would have been better if I had a bit more of this, or this.
Number one, I would say leadership, like coaching.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's only certain amount of like the top programs probably have like really good coaches, and I guess some of them, the head coaches have a reputation of being better managers
Yes.
and maybe
Recruiters.
that side of it than coaching, and maybe it's the assistant coach's responsibility to really coach the team tennis. But my experience from a mid-major with respect to my coach and also the other mid-major programs that we played, I was exposed to a lot of coaching that's a little bit different than at the top of the game. And I don't know if it's a priority. Like the men's, especially the men's tennis programs, there've been a lot of like schools dropping programs now, but I don't know if tennis is a priority for the athletic, what is it called, the athletic programs or whatever. So
Yeah.
if tennis was a little bit more of a priority, maybe they would pay a little bit more attention to the coaches. And maybe the reality is there's not that much accessibility for good coaches out there, but I believe that there's a really good opportunity for college tennis if it was ran a little bit better, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's nice to hear because, I guess one of my things, I'm a lot older than you, 15 years on you, and I was a US college boy. I went to LSU many years ago, and I certainly love it, and I do sing the praises of it, and I do think it's fantastic. But one of my concerns is that the bubble's bursting a little bit. That it's almost, when I went, it was almost deemed as a failure to go. But because of that, when you went, it didn't feel like, it was almost like a nice surprise. It was like, oh, this is amazing. Whereas almost nowadays, it feels like everyone's trying to flood in there. And there's and then you add in the NIL, where you've got obviously all of these now opportunities to pay players, and it feels like more and more people are having bad experiences, especially the lower down that you go.
Yeah, if I was middle to like a really good junior, I would 100% go to college because, especially like you said,
Yes.
NIL and the top programs normally have good training. Like they work really hard and they have their team time, their individual time with their coaches and stuff. They do a really good job. But I just think, like, to what you're saying, maybe there's too big of a separation now between the top programs and like the middle to the bottom programs. So the experience is completely different. Like,
Yes.
obviously on our podcast we tell a lot of stories, and it's insane that some of the top programs, when they hear some of the stories that I tell, it's like they can't believe that that's happened. Like things like stringing your own racket, or the amount of gear that we get in a year, or like what time we have to practice, because we can only go if it's cold outside. We can only go at 6 a.m. because that's the only time that's available at the country club for a decent price. Otherwise, middle of the day, no chance. So yeah,
So
maybe
come on,
now there's just
give us some of those shocking stories. Give us three or four, just a little bullet points of like things that people might not think of it. Like
yeah,
in my mind, LSU, I think sponsored by Nike, Reebok, all the kit that you want.
yeah,
Stringer, nah, that's not. And I'd get the racket and I'd be like, no, I want 53. That's 50. That's 51 and a half. Do it again. Eating steaks at the nicest restaurants. Like 1,000 people watching matches. Playing in Georgia, having like 6,000 people NCAA's, traveling with a media. This was back in 2000. So bring me down a peg or two, as a
yeah.
coach who's advising it now. Come on, hit me with some of the stories.
If I'm playing a match and I tap my racket like this and it's 53 and I prefer it to be like 57, I better play with this racket. This is the only racket I have. We got zero rackets. The stringing machine was in my dorm room for a few years. So guys would
Yeah.
come to my room and they'd be stringing in my tiny dorm room. It's just on my desk next to my books and whatnot. But eventually the coach moved it to his office. So then if we have a road trip scheduled, now we have to plan like who's going to string at what time. We have to go to his office to string. And it's like the offices where it's like the men's tennis is next to like the volleyball, next to the baseball. It's like all of the coaches are around and we're just in the coach's office stringing rackets. So yeah, whatever you strung, you better play with, because there's no like restringing. Like we do not have that budget. Like
Yeah.
shoes, we got 1 to 2 pairs maybe a year. Like that's it. You better wear them. That's what we're
No
wearing.
sliding.
No sliding. You better stop squeaking your feet. But yeah, it was just a lot different. Like the budget was a lot smaller. Like I remember one time, I don't even know if this has to do with the budget, but one time we're on our way to an event. I think we were in New York, and we're driving to the school, and I guess we didn't plan properly. Like our coach didn't plan properly lunch, or maybe we were running late. I don't remember what it was, but the only option for us before the match was Burger King. So he pulled into the Burger King and he said, "Guys, use good judgment." And then we all started laughing, like, "What do you mean use good judgment? We're in a Burger King about to play a match?" So, but those are the kind of things that happen. And I mean, it made us a lot closer as a group. And I guess a lot of it also had to do with the budget that he had to work with. Obviously, I'm sure if he had a bigger budget, he'd be able to spoil us a little bit more in some of those things. But yeah, we just didn't have the luxuries that I guess big programs had. We had 6 outdoor courts on campus, but it's in northern Kentucky. So when it gets cold, like we're not practicing outside, it's freezing. So the only option is indoor courts at 6 a.m. when it's
Yeah.
not that expensive to rent courts. And we only have 6 courts, and we have a men's and women's team. So a lot of the times we're crammed up on 6 courts, and that's just kind of the experience that I had in school. And yeah, the team ended up being a lot closer for it because we kind of went through the struggle together. But I don't know if it built champions necessarily.
Do you think though, one thing, as I talk a lot about this, they probably get sick of it. These poor kids at my academy, but I want them to do well, and you want to share things, and not just you want them to do well, you want them to be good people, and you want them to understand and live the values that you have been fortunate for people to pass on, and so we do spend quite a bit of time trying to nurture that. I can't help thinking, like listening to your story. One, back in Antigua, starting off playing tennis. Two, going to a university. It's a good university. It's not, but you haven't been given the entitled life that maybe some other people can do in this sport, right? But is that not, in some ways, a blessing in terms of where you are now? Because it's like you're still in the sport. And sorry, to go back to the point I was going to make, there's very few. We'd all like to think. I said it to a group today. I've got news for you guys. None of you are Carlos Alcaraz. You're not. You're
Yeah.
not. You're 14, 15 years old. We'd already know. You know what I mean? We'd already know. However, at the academy, we've had 4 different Grand Slam champions. One junior and three the real deal. We've had world number ones. We've had all of these things. We've had 58 scholarships. We've had all of these amazing things. We've had all these international tournaments. And I was saying to them, like, one of you or two of you, if you really get this right and you engage and you take this on board, that can be your path. And that's kind of the journey that you need to think about more. You need to think about a Lloyd Glasspool's journey rather than a Carlos Alcaraz's journey, maybe. You need to, but I people that get given everything from some of these countries and then maybe get given everything in college, maybe just are too entitled to have the gratitude to be able to want to stick in the sport or understand that actually this is a sport that I really want to do. You at age 30, you've gone through. I know we don't have a long time today. We can go into it all another time. But you've had long-term injuries. You've had challenges. You've had challenges where you were born. You've had challenges all the way through. Do you think in some ways that is a bit of a blessing, that it's making you still have the love for the sport and you've got that determination to want to do it now at age 30?
When you were explaining that, I instantly thought of my dad, because my dad we had an interesting relationship in terms of coaching. Like, obviously my dad's great and we have a great relationship personally, but in terms of tennis coaching, because my dad, he knows tennis, he knows a lot of tennis, but it's really hard to separate a coach from a dad. So sometimes the lines are blurred. So now maybe I get frustrated a lot when I'll play a match and he'll message me or he'll call me and he'll say certain things and I get pissed off. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not trying to hear this. This is not what you say to someone when they just finished a match. But I will say, to give him credit, in school, he did a really good job of, he was aware that maybe my teammates did not have pro tennis aspirations. And definitely I would say my program as a whole, as in my coach with respect to him and the fitness program and the trainers there, they also didn't have that much experience in building a professional tennis player. So my dad was instilling in me, like, and he still does it now to this day, and he'll be like, make sure that you're running, make sure you're going and run a couple of miles, make sure you're skipping rope. So then we would have my gym session. He would ask me, like, what did you do in session today? And I would tell him. He'd be like, that's like, okay, it's good for overall strength and conditioning, but it's not tennis specific enough for someone. So, or they would be like, how many days a week are you lifting? Are you only doing 2 or 3 days a week? Like, make sure you're doing the other days. And eventually I started maybe running miles on campus, and then my teammates would join me. So then I wouldn't be alone. So there was a year that we were running a lot as a team because I was just doing extra work because my dad was telling me to do it. But I think without that direction, you can definitely get lost. You can definitely, because I believe so much in environment, like, and if I'm in an environment and I'm a weak like character, and I'm in an environment that's not the most professional environment, I can definitely leak into the lifestyle of my teammates who, like, for example, one of my roommates was a double major and he worked really hard in school. He had a 4.0 GPA and his priority was education. So he was up until 3, 4 in the morning doing schoolwork when we have practice at 6 a.m. So that's not going to cut it for me if I want to play professional tennis, So I have to be a very strong character and be like, okay, that's his life, and I love him and we're great, but that's not what I want to do, and I have to make sure that I'm committed to my goal. So in that way, my dad did a really good job of making sure that I guess maximized the opportunity that I had. And granted, it may not have been an opportunity if I went to like a TCU or a Texas or Florida or one of these big programs, UCLA, but for my school, I think I maximized it as best I could, and that's a lot of credit goes to my dad for that.
That's good. Yeah, and I think it's important that everyone's got those people in their lives as well, right? Would you view your tennis playing career as successful?
Success for me, I guess the way I look at it is if you did everything you can to maximize your talent, and in some ways yes, and in some ways no. You see a lot of interviews of people saying that if they retire and they feel like they left some stuff on the table, they didn't push it to completely to the max, that they would be disappointed. And in some ways I feel that way about myself, but I know that also I'm really hard on myself, and sometimes I question how hard I'm being on myself in a situation, and I'm emotionally I can be an extreme person. So I would play a match and I feel like, wow, I played unreal today, and I'll rewatch the match and it was like pretty good. Or I feel like, wow, I played really bad today, and I watched the match and it's like, it's not as bad as I felt. So maybe I will take that same lens and apply it to the amount of effort that I'm putting in. And then maybe in the grand scheme of things, I feel like, yeah, I'm pretty much doing all that I can with, like I said, with what I have to offer, because being a player from the Caribbean, you don't have that much playing opportunity in terms of tournaments. You don't have that
Yeah.
much development from high level coaches, like maybe in Europe or some in the States and Asia and stuff, Australia. So in that sense, I think I've done great, and
Yes.
I went to school and, like I said, did the best I can. And there are definitely days that I feel like, wow, maybe I could have been more disciplined here. Maybe I didn't stretch, I didn't recover properly. But then there have been other days that I persevered like no other. So in the grand scheme of things, I think that my career is not over yet. And if I had to judge it up to this point, I would say yes, I have been.
What do you think you can achieve?
It's funny because when I made a decision to go to doubles, I think it's kind of funny because I guess this is kind of like, I don't know if this is like tennis politics, but it's a pet peeve of mine to hear all the people that bash doubles, and they say how easy doubles is, and if I play doubles I would be this and this and this and whatever, but they don't play it. So it's easy to sit on the outside and say how easy doubles is and how good you be doubles when you don't commit full time to it. So then when I guess in some ways I thought that my game would translate a lot better to doubles than it has to singles, and to an extent I was, but I always had that doubt in the back of my mind if I would be good enough to actually achieve those goals. And I think maybe that's just my personality, and maybe that's one of the things that I need to learn to do better is think bigger than I already did, because I had a lot of doubt this year that if I'd be able to perform at the challenger level, because I won a few futures last year, and over the last few years I won a few futures in doubles, and I had a big doubt because I went 0-6 in challenges last year, couldn't get past the first round. I had a lot of doubt, and then this year changed a lot. I semi to 100, I won a 75, and then all of a sudden it was like, okay, wow, I can do it. Now I just have to do it more often.
Yep.
I'm sure I'll have somewhat that mentality when it gets to the ATPs and the bigger events. And I guess it's kind of nice that some of my results in the challenges have come against ATP players. So in some ways, I know that I do have the opportunity, the possibility, and the level to do it. I think I have some strengths in my game. I'm 6'5". I have a big serve. I've worked a lot on covering the net. Good forehand, aggressive off the baseline. So I think that my game, like I said, translates really well to high level doubles. And I just need to, I guess, in my opinion, the stage I'm at is just being more consistent with my performances. And some of it is in my hands, and maybe some of it is just the nature of doubles, the nature of the highs and lows of the year, the matches that you play, maybe chopping and changing partners and
Yep.
surfaces and events. And so, like I said, some of it is definitely in my hands that I need to control better, and some of it is not in my control. And I've done a really good job of just being open to the life of doubles that's extremely unpredictable if you don't have a set partner to play with.
Absolutely. And look, I think it's even if you do, I mean that adds a massive challenge, 100%. But even if you do have the same partner in the double scoring system, you can easily go 2, 3, 4 first round losses where you've not done a lot wrong,
Yeah,
but you've just lost a couple of sudden death juices at the wrong time, or you've like you've lost a match tie break where
yeah.
it's a crapshoot, right?
That's how
So
I
it's
felt in the summer. I played with Draxel in Cary, and we won a round and we lost in the second round. I think we had a couple of set points in the second. We didn't take it and we lost in straights. Then the next week what was it, Winnipeg in Canada, up a set and a couple of break points at 4-3 to go 5-3. We didn't break. We ended up losing. The next week in Granby, I lost 7-6, 6-7, 10-8 to Draxel and Zink. The next week, Bloomfield were playing the 1 seeds or 2 seeds with Spaziri, up a set in a break. So I felt like in a span of four or 5 weeks, it was almost all 3 setters being in a winning position and losing. And I felt like, wow, I didn't do a whole lot wrong, and I've lost like 50 to 100 points left on the table there that's a lot of points.
yeah,
So on one hand, it was like very disappointing, but then on the other hand, it's like you said, I haven't done that much wrong. It's just the scoring
yeah,
system, and maybe just you don't know when that one point is going to happen. That it's a deuce point that you break, or deuce point that you hold, or you're up 40-15 and you have a ball that maybe you don't think about too much, you miss it, then all of a sudden they play 2 good points and you get broken from a position of 40-15 or 40-love. So you never know when that's going to happen, and that's just the nature of doubles, and you have to kind of live with it. And funny enough, we talked about Freddie Nielsen. I overheard a conversation with him a couple of years ago in Cassis,
Yeah.
and that's what he was saying. It's like sometimes in doubles you're going to lose a match because it's doubles, and those are the ones that you just need to just move on, forget about it. Don't let that hit your confidence at all. And you just go again in the next week. And you didn't lose it because you did anything wrong. There's nothing to improve, nothing to work on. You lost it because you play doubles, and that's it. And I try to live my life that way within reason.
Well, Freddie's a good one because with Freddie, he also has this very big philosophy on. He loved playing tennis and he loved getting better at tennis, and he was big on committing to the right clarity of game style, identity. You know, if I'm playing that way, you know, I would speak to him after matches sometimes. Hey, well done on winning. He'd say, no. At 30 all, I was a pussy at 30 all. I should have taken that second serve return on. I should have, whatever it might be. He was very, very locked into that. And at age 30, he won Wimbledon as a wild card. You know, it's like he was always looking to improve performance, improve, like, genuinely. You know, a lot of us say it. You know, when push comes to shove, it's not so easy to do, right? But he genuinely did. And then a couple of years later, he hadn't played much doubles, or he didn't want to just be seen as doubles. He wanted to just keep getting better at tennis. So he kept playing singles as well. And then a couple of years later, he semied at Wimbledon as well. You know, so like he always had that ability to play a high level of tennis, but that was not by accident. That was a very philosophical outlook that he had.
Exactly.
Which is what we've seen a little bit with August as well, right? You know, August is, I know he's not 30 yet, but August is 27, 28, you know, and he's got, I think, quite a similar philosophy of like, no, I'm going to put my game on the court and I'm going to keep getting better at my game, you know, and if it's, you know, and we'll see. And we saw at Wimbledon, he started to beat, you know, top 20 guys in the world, and, you know, you start to get your real breakthrough. And I think so many tennis players out there that are constantly worried about ranking rather than level.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, if you don't have the level, you ain't going to have the ranking, you know,
That's true. The
and people like,
rankings don't lie.
no. So it's like, you know, if you keep improving the level, and it's an interesting one. So in terms of, I I like to ask the questions that I think people are thinking when they're listening,
Okay.
and they're listening and they're going, 30 years old, 250 in the world in doubles, in a sport that we know is incredibly difficult to make money out of. How do you financially sustain being on the tour?
Yeah, well, I guess so. There's if there's one positive to being from a small nation is you're a big fish in a small pond. So I was lucky for a few years to be on the Olympic Solidarity Scholarship. So I would play the team games. So I'd play the Central American and Caribbean games, the Pan American games, just team events. I haven't missed Davis Cup since 20. I lie. I missed 1 year when I had hip surgery. But
Yeah.
and I think we actually didn't play that year. So every year I've been available to play, I've played, which since 2018, I think was the first year I played. So I've been supported through Olympic committee for a few years while I was on that scholarship, and my tennis federation with some of the money that I guess ITF sends them depending on what group we're in. You know, every country gets funded depending on what group they're in, so I will get a little piece of that. That helps me. But honestly, it's been through just generous people back home that have supported me to be able to come and chase my goals. So, you know, I really feel bad for the players who they're not they have the goal and ambition to play professional tennis, but they don't have the resources to actually do it. And I know that people make a big deal about the resources, but to me, it's also about energy and time that you spend. If I'm a player that I need to coach to make money a few hours a day and then go and train, like in my opinion, it's so difficult to then have the commitment to go and put 100% physical energy and mental energy into your tennis if you've already spent a few hours doing other things. So I guess in not that we're making any money from the podcast, but because we're not to the stage that we're at, but I'm lucky in the sense that I can do it from the AC in my hotel room. I'm not out on the court spending time like coaching other people and whatever. So maybe if they had a side project like that, it would be a little bit easier. But I feel bad for the players who you have to earn money in order to go and play tournaments to play professional tennis. And like I said, I was lucky that I come from a small country, and there were lots of generous people that have helped me over the years with private sponsors or scholarship from the Olympic Committee, or maybe for a few months the government would have helped me here and there with some flights and money. And if it wasn't for that it would be impossible for me to play professional tennis.
And do you take, because I guess the thing I love about the mind, right, is we can look at every situation one of two ways, and which I try. I've got 3 kids that I find myself saying that on a daily basis. Why we can look at it that way, but let's look at it this way. And it's like, is that something that you has brought a heaviness to you, that you feel that you are one? I coached a few players from Ireland, and again, I know Ireland's nowhere near as small as Antigua, but it's quite a small tennis nation, Ireland, and a Northern Ireland in particular. And this one particular player, I remember one time we were in Portugal, and he was so stressed, and I was like, "Hey man, what's up?" He said, "I just feel like I've got a nation on my shoulders." And I was like, "Dude, like, come on, let's, do you have that? Do you have that feeling, or have you had that feeling?"
I've never really felt the pressure because the people who have helped me in the past have never made it a big deal. Like, hey, if I don't see your improvement or if I don't see results, like they've never done that to me. So I've been very lucky in that way. And then on the other hand, I feel like with the support that I have, the financial support that I have, I've spent the finances doing what I believe is going to maximize my potential. I don't feel like I waste any money. I don't feel like I take it and like, you know what I mean? Like I feel like I put it directly to what we agreed upon, what I committed to from the start of my career, and I go to sleep every night knowing that I did the best I can on the day,
Yep.
and so I don't lose any sleep over it. And especially coming from a small country where, like, I know that if I don't at Davis Cup, if I don't win the singles point, we're losing 2-0. That's just what happens, and it doesn't really add any pressure for me. If anything, I dread the day sometimes because of how physical it's going to be. Especially now I'm 30 and I don't train singles anymore. I'm playing singles and doubles every day at Davis Cup,
Oh yeah.
but I don't feel any additional sense of pressure because they also know that I'm doing my best, and they do their best to support me. And no one's upset when Jody loses because yes, maybe I'm the only professional on tour, and yes, it's my job to get the result on the day, but they also know that I'm trying my best, and so they don't add any pressure. If anything, they do their best to make sure that I'm as comfortable as possible in the week, and they know that I'm committed to the team every year that we play, and so I don't feel any sense of stress or panic. If anything, the stress or panic comes when I am running out of money and I'm 4 or 5 weeks in and I see the credit card bill starting to rack up, and I'm like, oh my
Yep.
goodness, I better get the result at the tournament quick to to try and offset some of this money.
Because that was where I was going with this, and you've already kind of answered it. We've seen. I had Felix, the tennis brothers,
Okay.
on. I always forget his surname, but I think of him
Mishka,
as Felix. Yes, exactly. And then also, obviously, I haven't had Karen Sell on the
Kuru, yeah.
on, but there's some stories out there that they are using their platform through podcasts, through YouTube, that are funding their tennis. Like Felix said quite openly, he said, "Look, like some guys are taking the piss out of me. However, I'm making like triple, quadruple
Yeah, 100%.
the money, and I'm traveling with a content creator, and actually I'm trying my very best at tennis, but I am ultimately making a living. I'm making a living by playing tennis tournaments and by content creating
Yeah,
via those
100%.
tennis tournaments. With Sell's probably even more successful story in terms of how he's used that to then fund it for him to also. He's now got the ranking almost to go with as well. He's had some results, and it's we're in
Don't
2020.
let don't let Kuru fool you. Kuru is always very good at tennis, you know. So maybe yeah, financially it has helped him to play professional tennis. But
Yes,
I remember I
absolutely.
saw him last year, and he was like, he made some joke on Instagram or something about, oh, I'm just a YouTuber. I said, bro, shut up. You're not a YouTuber. Like, okay, you have a YouTube channel, but
Yes,
I lost a Kuru like before the channel, like way back when he's at UCLA. I told him, bro, what are you talking about? You've always been nasty at tennis.
but I think my point. I don't know his story so well, but I guess my point is in 2025 there is alternative ways now that people are looking at their careers.
100%.
You
Yep.
know, and obviously, when we jump into your podcast and the podcast you've been a part of, I know we're not talking about millions, but you are starting to get YouTube numbers up there. You know, you've had people like Nick Kyrgios on the show. You know, there's a bit more. You're coming into my algorithm. You know, I'm seeing you around. Right now, you said you're not making a penny from it. I guess where I was going was, is the ambition for you to be making some money out of that could also help
Yeah.
then and go hand in hand with the tennis playing.
Yeah, it's funny because it wasn't the first, I guess, the first reason why we wanted to start the podcast. Like, we started the podcast because we genuinely thought that there's a product in professional tennis low down the rankings that's untapped. And there's lots of potential there that people don't know about. There's a lot of unbelievable tennis players that are not marketed correctly. So that was
Mm-hmm.
the first idea was that let's just try and find a way to market professional tennis players outside of the slams. Like, obviously we care about the people in the slams as well too, like who doesn't, but I think there's so many tennis players that are very good that are not at the slams. And you know, there's
Absolutely.
kind of a stigma that like, oh, they're in the trenches, they're not that good, like whatever. It's like, no, we're still unbelievable tennis players. Just don't get me fooled. Like, because we're not at the slams doesn't mean that we're not good. We're still unbelievable. But then on the back of it, we're like, yeah, for sure, maybe this could be something. Because before then, I didn't watch any of Karu's content or Felix, or we watched zero tennis content. We watched tennis and that's it. But then we thought that maybe there's a way for us there to be able to support all Korea. Because at the time it was four of us traveling. We couldn't afford a coach on the road. We were like, maybe through this we can actually do it really well and have a coach on the road and blah 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 blah. But it's been over 2 years now, and it's obviously, like I just said, we haven't personally made any money in the business. Like, we've made a little bit of money in the business in enough to like reinvest and do things like improve our cameras and our lighting, and at times we worked with some consultants to improve the quality of the product and just things like that, editing at the beginning before we started doing everything on our own. I think pretty soon we'll start to turn the page and be able to profit off of it financially, like ourselves personally. But up until this point, we thought that it would have been a lot quicker, the growth. And obviously, like at the beginning, we just weren't very good at podcasting. And I guess we've become decent at it as time goes on. And I hope that the listeners and the people who watch and stuff know that we're just doing our best. We never claim to be the best podcasters in the world. Like, if we ever did, it's a joke. And we're obviously, there's some serious times and there's obviously times to joke on the podcast. And yeah, we're just enjoying it and learning a lot. And at the end of the day, regardless, it's a new skill that we're learning. And to run a business, we've learned so much over the last few years, and it's been a fun journey. Like, to think that we started at the beginning with cameras that we learn now are vlog cameras, and they were overheating on us nonstop, and we didn't know why. Like, why are they dying nonstop? It's like, yeah, because they're not supposed to be recording for more than 3 minutes, and we're running them for an hour. We've done multiple episodes where we record the full episode, and I realized that we didn't start the recording. The audio didn't record. Like, we've had so many stories over the last few years, and to think that we went from that to having like Grand Slam champions on the podcast, or like legends of the game like Uzni, Raonic, like this year alone has been like unbelievable. And I think through our content, the first, I guess, group of people that respected it were the players. And maybe now player after player comes on and they realize, oh my goodness, like, we can relate to so many different players, and they realize that the players almost break down a little bit, like break down the walls, and they just talk like person to person. It's less of an interview and more of just like a conversation. And now maybe the audience is kind of seeing that, and they realize how genuine it is. And maybe that's partly why we have a little bit of momentum now in terms of our growth. And hopefully it continues, because we think we have a pretty special product, and we're just hoping that we can like push on and keep learning and growing and improving our product as a business.
And you mention your podcast, obviously that's the Changeover Podcast, which yourself and Justin Roberts started in 2023, I believe, Jody. And, you know, as a fellow podcaster now, you know, we're connected in lots of ways, right? You know,
Yeah.
tennis doubles, you know, all of these things, but podcasting is obviously a passion of us as well. You know, how did that start? Why did that start? Give us your podcast journey.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, I was reading a book on a plane one day. I'll try and give the short story because I've given the long story a bunch of times and it's quite boring. So, yeah, I was just inspired. I was reading a book, funny enough, written It's called High Performance, and it's written from a bunch of podcasts with professional footballers. And I just thought there's potential in professional tennis that's untapped, and I was wondering how is the best way that we can, market players outside of the slams. So then we started talking, and we know nothing about production. We never recorded videos of any quality videos of us practicing and playing matches and stuff like YouTube channels. And we just thought, what we know is tennis, and maybe the easiest thing that we can do is talk about tennis and try to, shine a light on players that are outside of the slams, players that really need it, because I think there's so many good tennis players there that people don't know about and don't hear about. So maybe if we can do our part in changing the reputation of, futures and challenges and this level of tennis, then maybe we can make a difference. And that's pretty much how it started.
And in terms of, I guess I always find this interesting. I've talked about it quite a bit. I had Emilio Sanchez on the show, and he was maybe on my 50th episode, but he was probably one of the first people that I'd had on the show that I didn't personally know. And he was talking very passionately about his family. I felt, it was going well. The conversation was going well. I was finding, the Sanchez family is a fascinating family, and he's telling me in like real detail. And I look at the screen and I'm like, oh shit, I've not pressed record.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, we've done that a bunch of times.
And how I handled that at the time actually is I didn't want to stop the flow of the conversation, so I quickly pressed record, which you could do in those days. I used to do it on Zoom. It now tells you, it makes like a big song and dance now. It's like, you have now started to record.
Probably helps you with that, no? You need a little bit of help to know.
Yeah, and then at the end, I then said to him, look, I'm really sorry the first 20, 30 minutes wasn't recorded. Do you mind if we do that again? And fair play to him, he did, but it didn't have the same quite authentic way. So tell me about some of your challenges, your funny stories, your difficulties that you guys have had along the way.
Well, so like I said, we didn't know anything about this side of the business. So for the first maybe 3 months, we did a lot of research into, and this is not like professional grade research. This is like YouTube and Google teaching us stuff. So we decided, we invested, as 4 of us at the time, we invested a certain amount of money into equipment. And we purchased maybe 3 cameras, microphones, just some lights, like things that we thought would be good for us to start with, which they were. But obviously we didn't know anything about anything. So what I learned about a year in is that the cameras that we were using are vlog cameras, and they're not built to record for long time. They die quick. So we had a bunch of recordings where we would do the recording every 15, 20 minutes, the cameras would die. Then we're like, okay, we have to plug them in. Maybe they're dying because they're overheating. I don't know why they're overheating. And then we had stuff like that. We definitely had recordings where we do the entire recording, the podcast done, and there's no audio. Like, we've had a few of those. So we've shot over maybe, I would say 5 or 6 episodes, especially in the first, like at the beginning. And then as I get better at editing, I'm able to save something. So we had an episode recently where I don't know what happened. I think I touched the plug for the audio box that we had at the time in Florida, but I was able to save the audio with the camera audio. It doesn't sound as good, but it's a little trick that I learned to be able to save it somehow. But we had a bunch of mishaps. We had one episode, we were in Mexico, and it was with Zeke Clark, and I swear every 15 minutes the cameras were dying. We were in a hot room sweating, like it was terrible. But hopefully those days are behind us. It's good memories, but like I would prefer some smoother episodes now.
But in Jody, you mentioned it a couple of times in the conversation that it's about shining a light on the some of the lower levels, or the levels that players are making their way through that often don't get in the spotlight. But you've then had Nick Kyrgios, you've had Francis Tiafoe, you've had Tsitsipas, Raonic, Fernley, Ethan Quinn. You've most recently you've had Felix Auger-Aliassime. So where does that fit into it? Is that you've and also how are you getting those type of guests as well?
Well, I guess I'll start with the first question. So what we learned pretty quick with the podcast is that no one actually cares about Jody Maginley and Justin Roberts and Evan Zhu and AJ Catanzariti. That's the 4 of us that started at the beginning, and no one cares. So if we're sitting on a couch talking to each other, no one actually cares. We have to make them care somehow. So then let's say it's us bringing another guest on. Like, we don't have any names in the tennis space. We bring on a guest who was a peer at the time. they also don't have a name in the tennis space. And unless the product is unbelievable, no one's actually going to watch. So we had some interest at the beginning, but not that much interest. And then we learned, okay, maybe we need to share more of ourselves, because at the beginning the podcast wasn't about us at all. Like, we didn't care really to share much about ourselves. It was more like, maybe we'll shine a light on our guest that comes in on the week, and the whole episode will be dedicated to the guest. But like I said, we learned pretty quickly that no one cares. So then we said, okay, let's try and open up more and share more about ourselves, make people try and like us. And then if they like us, maybe they're interested enough in us, they'd be interested enough in the guest. So we tried it that way. That kind of worked. It didn't really work. And then I guess it took a long time for us to really figure out our identity in the podcast space. And then now I think the game plan is kind of, if we have a bigger name on, obviously everyone cares about the Felix and the Kyrgios and the Raonic and all these cool guests that we've had recently. So these guests have given us way more exposure than us building on our own. And I guess what I've come to learn, and what I can feel really proud about, along with Justin and Evan and AJ, who started with us at the beginning, is because we come from a place of not having a name, every person who clicks and watches our episode, they took a chance on us. They took a chance on people that they don't really know. And that proves to me kind of that we have a product that's special, that people are actually interested in and they want to watch. And like I said, like, through the bigger names that we've had on recently, it's given us a lot of exposure, and we have a lot of growth in the last few months thanks to a lot of the guests that we've had. But yeah, I can understand the perspective of, if I want to grow the Challenger and the Futures guys, then how is a Felix Auger-Aliassime and Nick Kyrgios and all these guys going to help me? But the way they're going to help us is exposure and basically marketing the podcast in ways that we weren't able to do with our peers at the time.
There's so many things that came up in what you said there, and I'm going, right, which one do I jump into here? Because I'm curious.
I know I'm all over. I'm sorry.
No, not at all. It's interesting, right? I'm curious on it, and I guess the one that, just to pick up on one of the last things you said there, you said you've grown a lot the last few months, but I guess, how do you measure growth of the podcast? You know, it's also can be quite a difficult thing. Is that just pure number of downloads? You know, how are you guys? And I guess on that same question of measurement, I guess growth and how you measure success, I think, are two interesting topics on podcasts. And I don't know how you guys view that.
Okay, so we can measure growth in two ways. So if we're talking about numbers, that analytics, that's one way to measure it. But then, like, you can also talk about the identity of the podcast. So like I said, the podcast kind of changed, like, especially when it went to just me and Justin. Eventually we transitioned to just two of us. We were still trying to searching for, I don't know, the system that we have, like, whose responsibility is what, who has, whose responsibility, I guess, the flow of the episode, what segment happens here. We have a game that we play at the end. Do we do that at the beginning? We tried at the beginning, we tried at the end. We had the role where I was the one who was almost like leading the episode, and Justin was the one who was. So it took a long time for us to kind of figure out, and maybe it's also still evolving, but I think we have a pretty clear system now and an identity of a podcast, so people know what to expect when they watch the Changeover podcast. For the most part, we have some that are different, but for the most part, we have a system. And then from the analytics standpoint, we do our best to manage. Like, there was a lot of studying of YouTube and learning, like, the analytics of, what percentage of people click on your thumbnail, or when they click on the episode, how quickly do they click off? If they click off fast enough, that means we start slow. That means we're not interested enough in the first 30 seconds. So there was a lot of studying, and we had some help and consulting with some people that helped us learn that. Also a lot of editing tricks also from, I don't know if you've seen Insiders Tennis, but Matt Calvis has helped us a lot with editing and teaching me little tricks and stuff here to how to make the production side of it better. So in those ways, we developed a lot. There's something else I forgot. There was another question that I forgot there.
But no, so I guess, no, I'll pick it up there, because it's like, I guess one of the things I'm interested in, and I mentioned this earlier on in the chat, you're a professional tennis player. We talked about, Carousel, we talked about, Felix, Tennis Brothers, we talked about, I guess, this almost hybrid model now. There's a way. Being a tennis player is very expensive, being able to, I guess, ultimate success. And a very quick story I'll share on that. A guy, Joseph Siriani, an Australian, he was an Australian tennis player. He's now a coach. I remember speaking to Joseph, this is years ago, when I was still playing, and his ranking had dropped to like 700-800 in the world. He was always a 250 guy, singles. And I played him in a final in a money tournament in the UK. And I said, "Oh, where have you been? Have you been injured? Like, what's up?" And he's like, No. He said, "I've been." He goes, "I'll be honest. I've been making some money. I've been playing German league tennis, French league tennis. I've been playing all of these events, and I just got to the point of my career where I was realizing actually the ranking's not the be all and end all. It's actually about making a living." And he goes, "And actually, in the last 6-8 months, I've made more money than I'd made in any other year when I was just sitting at 250, 300 in the world. Yet my ranking is 700, 800." And I remember thinking, you know what? He's thinking differently to other players. Like players, we get on this kind of like ranking
Yeah,
treadmill. And I guess now in 2025, it feels to me that maybe that's evolved not just to playing money tournaments, but it's evolved into content creation potentially.
of course.
And you've got players. So is that something that you would see as the podcast, as the YouTube, is that something that you guys have in mind that you as a success measure, or is it more organic? Like as an example, for me, one of my success measures is it energizes me having these conversations,
Okay.
and I take loads from it, and I find that it frees my mind up, and it's like almost like a type of therapy in some ways, or I'm continued personal development, which we all need in our life as well.
Yeah.
When I was thinking about, do I continue doing it and why am I doing it? I think that's quite an organic success measure. I'm not just thinking of the outcome, right? I need to make money from this. Where are you guys at with what you're doing?
Yeah, so this is actually the part that I was going to explain that I couldn't remember the question. So talking about success, so I'll answer the I guess the financial side in a second. But for me, like I said, what I was passionate about is a lot of players in the challenges and futures. So the guys who don't have big social media accounts, and the guys who no one knows about this player and what they think about and what they go through, and the travel and the stories and the training and how much purpose goes into everything and every decision that people make. So what I had in mind was that we grow our channel, our platform grows to a good size. We have on a guest who, like I said, is one of these guys who has a social media platform that no one really knows about. You kind of have an idea of the name. There are a couple hundred in the world. No one really knows about them. My hope is that that player comes on our platform, our guests, our audience likes this player, and now they want to go and support this player. Hey, let's go watch this player compete at this challenger. Let's go watch this player compete at this tournament. And that's kind of the goal that we had set in place. And it's marginal. It hasn't happened like a crazy amount yet, but we've had, at least for me, audience come out to matches that I've played in different cities, different countries around the world. And then also we see a bunch of comments. Hey, I went and watched this player play, and I didn't have any idea of this player, but I went and watched him play at Wimbledon. I went and watched him play at this challenger. So it is happening, and those are the stories that really excite us. From, like, you asked about success. That's what success means to me
Yeah,
from
great.
a purpose of the podcast standpoint. And then the financial standpoint, yeah, that's definitely what we thought at the beginning with a group of players. It was 4 of us at the time, and we were like, wow, it'd be really nice to be able to, start this business, do it properly, hopefully make some money to be able to afford a coach on the road. Because I can't remember if this was the podcast that I talked about it. It's been like a blur how many episodes I've done. But to me, there are a lot of tennis players that are not doing it properly, that they don't have access to a coach on the road. They don't have access to proper training when they're at their base. So for me, what was really important for me is that to have a coach on the road. And I still haven't had the income to be able to afford a coach on the road, but I think that's very important. And that was one of our goals at the beginning, financial goals, was to be able to generate some income. And it was 3 of the 4 of us were training together. So we were like, yeah, hopefully we can afford a coach on the road. And like I said, it hasn't happened yet. The business is, I would say, it's doing well. And the little income that we've had, we've reinvested into the business. So we've purchased new cameras, so the quality of our episodes are good. No more vlog cameras. We was trying to sell them, actually. No one wants to buy them, but we have
Well, you
2
don't,
proper...
you don't exactly sell them in a great light. You maybe need to,
Yeah.
you maybe need to work
If
on your
anyone
sales
wants to do any
technique.
vlogging, we have the cameras for you. But yeah, that's pretty much where we're at now. And I think, like I said, through the growth of the numbers, we're probably, like, we're getting to a point where we're appealing to some brands, and which is an exciting time for us. Like, it's been a long time coming, a couple of years in, and through the success we've had recently, hopefully we can just push on and really break through.
And what happened to Evan and AJ when 4 became 2? You know,
4 became 3, and then 3 became 2. So
okay, you sound like the
yeah.
Spice Girls.
No, they just weren't as committed to the podcast as Justin and I were. Like, they have, I guess, different goals and different things in their life that they want to focus on. And we're still really close friends. I talk to them all the time, and Evan still comes on the podcast every now and again. And like I said, we're still close friends. Especially Evan. I talk to Evan every day, like pretty much every day. So
okay.
They still want us to do well. They still believe in the project. It's just they were unable to at the time when we needed them to really commit to a lot of time and responsibility, and that's fine, you know.
No, absolutely. Those open conversations. That's
Yeah.
that's always the best place to get to. I can't have you on. I mean, the one I when I look on, and I guess probably where I first heard of you guys, it would be Nick Kyrgios. You know, because
Okay.
even when we talk about those names, you know, it's for me. Kyrgios is the name, right? Kyrgios is, and he knows it. I think, you know, and I think he plays into it, but he just is. He's one of our biggest stars in the sport. Tell us a little bit about Nick Kyrgios and how that came about.
So we had one of his friends on, Tawhid Brown, a long time ago, and I know he shared one of our clips a really long time ago with that episode. But I've seen him every now and again. He would like one or two of our clips, so I guess he had an idea who we were.
Yeah.
And I actually practiced with him in Cincinnati way back in the day. He wouldn't have remembered that. He probably wouldn't have known that it's the same person. I look a little bit different now than I was then. But yeah, just randomly one day he responded to one of our, maybe he commented on one of our posts. I put it to the story, and then he responded to it in our DMs. So, which is not the first time a pro has talked to us in the DMs on our podcast, but yeah, I just messaged him and I said, hey, like, we'd love to have you on the podcast one day. And at the time he said, yeah, like the podcast, we'll be in touch. And I try not to be overbearing because I know personally how busy it is for me, and for these guys it must be a million times more busy. So just over time, like, I gave him a few weeks, a few months, I reached out again, and then he was like, yeah, let's do it. And we've been lucky because I think a lot of the players, especially the players at the top of the game, were a little bit different than other tennis journalists. Like they
Yeah.
First of all, a lot of the guests that we've had on are either friends of ours or friend of a friend. So we're lucky in that way. But then also maybe we're able to relate to them a little bit differently that most people won't. So like I said, we're really lucky to, you know, it's happened before where people ask, like, how do you get this guest and how do you get this guest? And it's very simple. It's just a message, or a message from a friend to a message. And we've been lucky that these players respect our content and they respect the conversations that we have, and they probably can sense that it's for the better interest of the players. Our first goal is to help the players. So yeah, we're lucky in that sense. And yeah, Nick was great. Like, yeah, like I said, he just had an idea who we were. He doesn't really know us. And yeah, we try to approach all of the episodes that we have with an open mind. Like, I knew that there's some topics. What I really didn't want to happen with the Kyrgios episode was I didn't want him for him to say something that I didn't agree with, but then I sit quietly and I didn't want to just be a yes man on the episode. You know, I wanted to be authentic and be myself, which in my opinion, like, to me, it was a good episode. And we've had mixed feedback, obviously, because he's very polarizing. People love him or they hate him. But first of all, I'm thankful that he came on and spent time with us and talked to us. And by the end, he seemed to really enjoy it. And it was the same with a lot of other pros. Like Tsitsipas is the same way. I think he didn't really have a clue who we were at the beginning, but by the end, he seemed to like enjoy the episode, which is, it shows that, yeah, we're doing something different and something that the pros actually genuinely enjoy. And we've had a few people on a few times, and I'm sure we'll be able to reach out to them and have them on again.
Have you had anybody on that after having them on, you reflect on the episode and you think, I wish I'd gone a different route, or I wish I'd handled that conversation? Because that's, I guess, part of the learning process as well.
Yeah. There was one, but that wasn't, it was more what we learned from that episode is we need to be better hosts. So at the time, it was an episode that we shot at our house, and it was a guest that I didn't know, but some of the other guys knew. And they came into our apartment, and it was a room full of people. And I was under the assumption that because this guest knows some of the other hosts, that they would be comfortable in the room. So we didn't really host that person well enough. We didn't get them comfortable enough to be like,
Okay.
this is this person. Would you like a drink? Here, this is going to be your seat. Like, this is what we're going to talk about. And we just reflected at the end, and we're like, okay, our responsibility as a host starts before the podcast starts. So that was part of our system. Now we included that in the system.
Yeah.
And then also we would just reflect on the episode. It happens often where Justin and I will say, this is a better way to ask this question. This is something that we can do better. So we do that quite a bit. And then the only other one that I regret, and it's maybe not really in my control, is like some of the episodes that the Wi-Fi wasn't great. So it's a situation where you want to get the episode in because it's such a great guest, and you don't want to be inconsiderate to their time because they're taking out the time to come and do the episode and sit down. But because the Wi-Fi isn't great, it doesn't allow for the best product, because part of what makes us good is that it's a little bit loose and we can banter and make jokes and that. But if the Wi-Fi is not good, then we don't want to interrupt the flow of the conversation or the thought that the person is having. So then the person will make a joke or stuff like that, and it doesn't really come off, and we don't really have those little witty comments that we normally have because we don't want to interfere. So that's happened a few times, and I mean, we do the best that we can to save the episodes, but that's just a part of what we deal with doing it over calls like this one.
I had Marty Fish. Marty Fish was on, and I look back at that, and I just allowed it basically to be he told his story like he told his story on Netflix.
Okay.
And afterwards I was like, you idiot. Like,
Yeah.
people may as well just watch the Netflix show. Like,
Yeah.
like it was a completely different, if I had that again, I would come from a completely different angle,
Yeah. How much research do you do into each guest? Like, would you go into and watch other interviews and other episodes of podcasts with the guests that you have on?
Yes, and I'm lucky because we're linked to my academy, sort of tennis academy. When we got to the point where it was actually obviously strategically, is this something we're going to continue with? It's a lot of time. It was taking me probably 20 hours a week when I was first doing it during COVID, 25 hours. I just don't have that time. So then my wife edits and does an amazing job. That's her background. But then within the team, I do have someone in the team that does the research I wouldn't say for me, with me, and actually my philosophy on that is you need to research things that you can't Google within 10 or 15 minutes.
Okay. Interesting.
So
we go the opposite direction. We go we go the direction of, we want it to feel like a locker room. So we actually don't want that much detail. Like, we don't want to know too much. We want it to be as much. We don't want to be the stats guys. Like, this is your serving percentage and this is your win percentage on clay. Like, we don't want to be those guys. We want to be where the tennis players choose to tell their stories and where they feel the most at ease, where they feel that they can be loose and say things that they wouldn't say on Tennis Channel, and where they don't feel a responsibility to protect their image necessarily. They can just be themselves and trust that we have their best interests at heart. Because we tell them, every episode we tell them, and it's never happened where I say, be yourself, you can do or say whatever you want. And at the end of the episode, if there's a part of the episode that you don't want in, or you want us to remove or redo, feel free to let us know. And we've not had it once. So yeah, that's kind of the side that we want it to be, which is a little bit different to yours, obviously. So it's interesting to hear the different systems.
It is and it isn't. I think it would be the same. Like, that would be the similar comment we would make, or conversation we'd have before with everybody that look. And we actually have had a few people take little bits out.
Okay.
Whether it's Andy Murray's trainer talking about something that maybe Andy wouldn't like, or there's been like just a couple of little bits. But the one that I mean with the research would be not so much around stats, but more like with Pat Cash. It was actually, Pat Cash is a funny story because Pat came on, and it was actually, we had interviews we have a placement student that works on the podcast every year. And by the way, we've just put the adverts out. We'll put that in the show notes as well. Anybody listening wants to go in for that for next year. And it's worked amazingly the last 3 years. So someone comes in and they're at the academy for 12 months, but they're working solely on Control the Controllables.
Nice.
And the interview process was to research notes for an episode with 1987 Wimbledon champion Pat Cash. And somebody who ended up getting the job found this like unbelievable story about Pat Cash that around he was offered like $1 million from some Hungarian princess, or it was like a really random story.
Okay.
And when I brought that up in the episode, Pat Cash literally nearly fell off his chair. He
That's
was like,
funny.
"What the?
How do you know that?
Like, how do you know that? Like, I've
Yeah.
no one's ever asked me about that. Like, how do you know that?" And so little ones like that, or like Nick Bollettieri, bless his soul. I had Nick. Nick was our 100th episode, and I listened to so many of Nick Bollettieri's. He's basically got 3 stories he tells. Doesn't matter what podcast he goes on, he tells these 3 stories.
Okay.
So knowing things like that's good, because I don't want him telling those stories. I want
Try to avoid them.
And whatever I asked him, he kept bringing it back to those stories.
Okay.
So it was like, so in the end, I actually had to go with something present, and I said, "So Nick, what would you do? How would you coach Nick Kyrgios?" I actually said that. It was actually,
Okay.
and then he couldn't bring up a story about Jimmy Arias when
Yeah.
I've asked him how he would coach Nick Kyrgios.
That's
so
funny.
like different ways. So that it's more, I would say, more using the research for those type of things, or to be able to drop something in.
I think for us, it's like most of the guests we have on, if we don't know them, it's a friend of a friend. And obviously we both know the friend who's doing the connection. So they probably have in the back of their mind, that friend probably could have given them a little bit of intel to ask them this story or that story. So like that happens quite a bit, where we know we have a story that we're going to ask to try and bring up, and that happens quite a bit. But outside of that, like Justin will do the research and he will come up with, he will do a little bit of research, but we don't want to be the super structured, super like detailed stats team. We want to be the more, you feel like you can just relax and talk to someone who you can relate to. And it happens all the time where I'm at a tournament in person and we're having a conversation like at a lunch table or something, and I'm thinking, this is what I want the podcast to be. This is the exact setting and feel that I want the podcast to be, and we do our best to do that. And it helps. In person is a lot better than the Zoom. The Riverside is what we use, but yeah, we just manage how we can.
You guys do it. You guys do a great job, and it's a big well done in all you're doing. And I think, look, it's I know myself, right? I have I'm a big football fan or soccer fan, and I love listening to podcasts. But what I'm finding more and more, when I go to the gym, it's what I do. But more and more, actually, I'm finding I like watching them on YouTube.
Okay.
I think it's, it does bring something a bit more alive as well. I think seeing the people and seeing their interactions and, seeing all of those things. And that brings me back to something that I was in my head earlier on when you were talking about the guests that you have on. And it's, somebody gave me a bit of advice a couple of years ago where they said, and I found this quite hard for me to get my head around this, but they said people listen to podcasts for the hosts. They don't listen for the guests. And I was like, nah, come on. Of course people are coming on to listen to Iga Swiatek and Andy Murray. They're not coming on to listen to bloody Dan Keenan. Do you know what I mean? Like what you're talking about. But what they said is the way that world works is people buy into that brand, and ultimately you're gonna have guest fatigue. So so you get Andy Murray, then who do you get? Rafael Nadal. Okay, now who do you get? Carlos Alcaraz. And now who do you get? Roger Federer. Now where do you go? Whereas it's kind of like people are buying in. Obviously, the guest is part of the show and what they do. When I think about it, it is true with the podcast I listen to. I'm going back to the guests, not the guests. Sorry, I'm going back to the hosts.
The host, yeah.
And I'm going back to what they're bringing. And okay, there'll be different guests that will be coming on the YouTube side of things. I know that's something that you guys have done and you've grown. And maybe give me a little bit of advice on this. We're relatively new to YouTube. We're starting to move. Give me 2 or 3 bits of advice on how we can progress the podcast via YouTube.
Well, I mean, I half agree with what you said before about people return for the host. I do think that we have a core audience that definitely returns for the host. But I think we're very young in our years in terms of like potential of where the podcast can go. So if you think of the podcast landscape of tennis, you have like the big guns of like the Nothing Majors and the served and whatnot. And I know there's a bunch of educational podcasts that I haven't personally listened to, but I know they're out there for people. But in terms of like the player-led podcast, I know you have those ones. And I think in those cases, they have a bigger audience. They have a bigger core audience that definitely the served podcast, they're fans of Roddick, and the Nothing Major podcast fans are fans of those guys, you know. And out of our, let's say, I don't know how many we have on YouTube now, maybe 13,000, 14,000, whatever. There's a core audience there within that number that definitely they're fans of us. They've been there from the beginning. But like I said, we're so new to all these people who haven't seen us yet that I think there's a lot of people that have seen us for the first time. And I think part of what helps us is we try to show them that there's a reason why we have these opinions. So I'm not going to come here and talk about a forehand when I know nothing about forehand. So I'll show through our vlogs, through our lives, through my results, that I have a reason that backs up my opinion. So that's kind of what we want to do. And then in terms of the numbers and the growth on YouTube, we've learned so much about packaging, you know, what topics that people care about. So people are obsessed with specs, racket specs. Anytime we post a clip and we ask a player about their specs, people love that. So that's a quick fire way. If you have a guy on, whoever you have on, you ask about their specs, and that's a surefire way that people are interested in. People love a good story about the big three, whether that's the big three versus the big four. Is Andy Murray part of the big four? Does that even exist? Oh, they love that debate. They love.
Should we have it? Should we have it to get people listening to this episode? I mean, I'm joking.
I don't want to get cancelled. So, but yeah, there's that debate. And then just back to the packaging. Like, there's so much to learn about the thumbnails and the titles and all that stuff. There's a lot of little stats that you can go and look at. Like I said before, what percentage of people are clicking on your videos? How fast do they click off? You can look at the retention, what conversations. Maybe for us, they like to hear us debate the players back and forth, but maybe for your audience it'd be something different. Maybe your audience likes the more education side of it or the history side of it. Who knows? I would say you can study the history and see every episode, see what conversations people like to listen to, and maybe you can focus on those more often, or at least try and make clips, shorter versions of that, so people can, you know, watch a 5-minute video of Pat Cash's story about $1 million, whatever, you know, like those kind of things.
Yeah, and I think that's also the way people quite like to consume content, right? I think we're all guilty of being just scrollers, which for me is, it's almost contradictory to why I like podcasts. You know, even though we obviously put those clips up, and you know, it's funny you said that. Like we had an Andy Murray clip where Andy Murray, I asked him one of our quick fire round questions. I asked him who is the greatest of all time, and he gave a very nuanced answer on that.
What did he say?
He said, so Murray is unbelievably measured in any question you ask him. You know, he's a really thoughtful guy, and he said, well, it's a very difficult answer to give because what we're talking about here, on what court surface, you know, different eras played on different court surfaces. You know, he basically went in a roundabout way. He said it would be different on different court surfaces, you know, but he answered it very intelligent, very measured, and he didn't actually give like, it's this player.
So he didn't say that the GOAT is Djokovic. He didn't say that.
He didn't say that. No.
Okay.
And what was interesting actually was, he almost avoided saying that.
Okay.
And then 2 months later he was coaching him.
Okay. Well, according to a lot of people in our comments, he's not a part of the Big Four, which I find to be crazy. But they're saying the Big Four doesn't exist.
I mean, I would imagine Andy would say that himself, actually. But
coming from a place of humility, maybe.
Yes.
From a place of objectivity. Yeah.
Yeah, but that ended up having a couple of million views on TikTok or, you know, something like that, you know. Whereas what I quite like about podcasts, you see, is I like the context as well. I like that. I think we've lived over the years, and certainly in my day it was like newspaper headlines. We've lived like a headline life, whereas what I like about podcasts is you actually can get to understand a little bit more why Andy Murray thinks that. So rather than the
Of course.
headline, you actually can give an intelligent answer, and you can kind of measure your way through it,
Yeah.
and get that across. And I think that's why it's a nice way to consume. Now, in terms of your time, I'm very conscious. We do have a quick fire round that we need to go through, Jody, very quickly before we finish. But I would love to know the future for you, the future for you on the tennis court, the future for you behind the microphone. It seems like you're in a really exciting, progressive part of your career on all sides. So what can we look forward to seeing from you over the next few years?
I guess the big dream is to play at the top of the game, to be playing the ATPs, playing the slams. So from that side of things, it's what I've been dreaming about since I was a kid. So that would be really nice. And like we talked about earlier, maybe I need to improve in a few areas, but also maybe what I need to do the most is just be consistent and be putting results on the board. So that's what I look forward to the most in terms of the tennis court. And then, yeah, with the podcast, it's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly what we see ourselves being because we've evolved over time. And yeah, I would just like to continue to grow the channel, grow our YouTube channel, and grow our audience to a size where, like I said, we can help out a bunch of our friends, help out a bunch of our peers. And at this point, it's just Justin and I doing it. But hopefully, at some point, we can expand the business to be able to do a lot of other side of content that right now we do some vlogs, we do some lives, we do this kind of stuff. But what we learn is that we actually do have time in the week to be able to record stuff. What we don't have time as much to do is to record stuff when we already have obligations to edit. So once we grow our business big enough to where we can hire editing teams or production companies or whatever it is to be able to have some help, we look forward to bringing a more full package where we definitely have our content, that our staple, our podcast, and we continue to have guests on and whatnot. But also we have the more vlogs, the more lives where we can interact live with our audience, back and forth, answer questions. Just continue to bring like a whole package so people can almost come with us every week and experience what we experience through our content. And that's kind of what we dream about a little bit. And I feel like we're taking steps towards that. We're definitely learning, and yeah, we're excited to keep doing it.
So are you ready for our quick fire round?
Let's do it. I'm a little bit nervous. I've never seen this before. Let's do it.
What does control the controllables mean to you?
To me, that's like one of the basic things of tennis, in my opinion. My dad was a big supporter of this back in the day, especially with the serve, because he was like, the serve is the first shot in tennis, and you can control like your routines going up to the line. Like up to now, my dad will still talk to me about how many times I bounced the ball before my serve and these kind of things. In some ways, tennis, there's a few things that are non-negotiable, and to me, those are the things you really need to pay attention to, because beyond that, it could be a crazy sport, and you don't know what's going to happen. So that's kind of what I think about with control the controllables. You just put yourself in the best position possible by ticking all the boxes that you can.
What's your craziest tennis story?
My craziest tennis story. One year I was traveling to Mexico. I left Florida. I think I had one stop in Mexico City, and this might have been my first or second year on tour, so I didn't know much about traveling at all. I landed in Mexico City. There was one more flight to take, but I didn't know that Mexico City, that the flight, I landed in the evening. The next flight was at 5 a.m. And I didn't know they shut down the terminal at night. So when I landed, I was outside the bus terminal waiting to go to the other terminal. I fell asleep. I woke up, it was like 40 degrees, 45 degrees, freezing cold. I got to the next, so I slept on the floor in the airport, got to the next terminal, took that flight, and I have a headset kind of like this one, and I'm not really paying any attention. I look out the window, and it's a propeller plane, and I think that the propeller is spinning so fast that it looks slow. So it's looking like this. It's looking kind of slow. So I'm thinking it's not, it's so fast it looks slow. And I look back inside and I see everyone has their head down. So I quickly take my headset off and I hear the lady screaming like, everyone put your head down, like between your seats, whatever. So we had an emergency landing. Like I didn't know. I guess it actually wasn't working. I thought that it was just moving slow, but it actually wasn't working. We had an emergency landing in the middle of like a grass field in the middle of nowhere, 2 hours away
Wow.
from the actual destination we had to go. The airport was tiny. Like the airport was like the smallest airport I've ever seen. It's basically just a hut. We waited 2 hours for a bus to come pick us up. I got into a bus. I'm the only one that speaks English. No one else speaks English. They know I show them the hotel I'm going to in the city. They take me to the city. and it was like over 24 hours of travel. I had no phone service the whole time. Finally got to the hotel, got in the lobby, I asked for the Wi-Fi. I told my parents, hey, I'm alive. Like, this is what happened. I'm alive. I got to my hotel room, no Wi-Fi. So I was at that place for 3 weeks. So yeah, I would say that's probably one of the craziest stories I've had. Maybe that one, and 1 year in Tunisia, I had no suitcase for a week. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Your favorite ever, the Changeover Podcast guest, and why?
That's a tough one. Like, people ask me this all the time, like, what's my favorite episode? What's my favorite guest? And it depends on what you're looking for. But for me, I enjoy just sitting around bullshitting with my friends. So I would say maybe like Carlos Aguilar. We had an episode with him. We had 2 with him. The first one wasn't so great. The second one I thought was really funny. I really like that one. And then there's some guys that I really have a lot of respect for, like in terms of there's some guys that you want to root for, and it's nice that they get results because there's so much thoughts and purpose put into how they prepare. I really like guys like Ethan, guys like Nishesh. I think Colton has a pretty good story. There's so many more guys that I can think of that we had like really good episodes with. So I would say those ones kind of stand out to me. And then obviously I have a lot of respect and I'm thankful for a lot of the big guests that have no reason to come on and talk to us besides the fact that they probably like our content and one of our friends are friends with them and they just come on and have a good time. So yeah.
What's your favorite snack?
Ice cream. I would say like a
Flavor?
cookies and cream ice cream, maybe a little bit of like a cookie dough or a birthday cake. Like, depends on the mood, chocolate. Yeah. That's what I would go with.
Hey, I'm not arguing. I'm not arguing with any of them.
Okay.
Who are the most aesthetically pleasing tennis players in your eyes on the men and women's tour?
That is okay. You're talking about like the game style.
Yeah, someone that you look and you go, they look good. Like, they look good the way that more from a technical standpoint than a good look standpoint.
I mean, how do you argue with like Yannick Sinner? The thing is, I don't know if he's like.
Well, I would argue.
Pleasing.
I would argue with that.
But I don't know if he's aesthetically pleasing in the sense of like his strokes look unbelievable, but it's more aesthetically pleasing as in like the look of the ball off the strings and like the direction of the ball off the strings. So maybe that's a bad answer. I mean, guys who are fun to watch. Dimitrov is sick to watch, I would say.
Dimitrov's the one that jumps to my mind on this question.
Yeah, I would say this one maybe it's not that expected, but I think Arthur Fields is sick to watch. His forehand is a joke. Fonseca, also forehand a joke. On the women's side, I'm not sure, actually. I really don't know if I have an answer for that one, to be honest. I just think that it's crazy how good backhands girls have and how little spin they have, especially on the backhand side. I guess it's more normal when you have 2 hands on the racket. The ball spins sideways a little bit more than it spins forward.
There's a lot of beautiful two-handed backhands on the women's side.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
you basically, I mean, I coach on the WTA tour. You basically, in my notes in every match, don't serve to their backhand. Don't give them that
that's
backhand.
What I'm saying.
Don't do that. Don't give, it's like constant.
And I find that they have like also loose wrists in a way. Like, it doesn't look like they're like muscling the ball. Like, they're swinging really hard, but it looks a little bit loose. Like the wrists almost look a little bit loose. Sorry. Yeah. I think it's a joke. But yeah, I don't know how to answer that question.
Hey, you've answered it. There's no given answer on this. This is your stuff. Okay. If you could steal one shot from another player and add it to your game, who would it be and why?
Like, what I've learned in professional tennis is everyone has their thing. Like, everyone has their, if I only had a whatever, I would be fucking number 1 in the world. Like their dream is if I just had this. And I think it depends. If we're talking about doubles, I would say maybe like a backhand return.
Yep.
Like, I would say depends. If I'm on the deuce side, I think backhand return to be able to hit like a backhand return inside out.
So do you want? I would
say like, I don't know if I would pick a doubles guy necessarily. Maybe I'd pick one of the singles guys. Because the thing is, the singles guys, if they actually really take their time and focus on doubles, the game would just be elevated even more, in my opinion. The reason why the doubles guys are so good is because they spend so much time on this.
So that's this is an interesting one. Like because we've seen that. I mean, there was some podcasts, I don't know who it was, but they should be embarrassed at themselves. They were saying, I think it might have been the Nothing Major guys. They were saying they were debating whether Yannick Sinner, Yannick Sinner would beat two doubles players on court. What the hell was
I
that?
think he won't. No, I think he won't.
Of course he won't. No
Yeah.
chance. But
The
no
thing
chance.
is-
Like that was a ridiculous thing. But I would even go a little bit further than that. And we saw it with the mixed doubles at the US Open, right? The mixed doubles at the US Open for me was just the prime example. Jack Draper was the number 4 player in the world. Jack's an incredible tennis player. I know he's dropped a little bit because he's been out injured. Casper Ruud has been one of the best players on the tour for the last 5-6 years. 2 or 3 Grand Slam finals, all of those things. The mixed doubles, and we were all watching it. I was in Mexico in the tournament, run-up tournament to the US Open. And the semi-final was Ruud and Iga and Pegula and Draper. And it was like, as someone who is I'm a big doubles guy. I played it, but I've also now coached it to a very high level, with the high level players for the last 4 or 5 years. Their skill level, their double skill level was so far away when it came to anything at the net. 5 minutes after that match finished, Vavasori came on the court. And it was like night and day in terms of what you were watching, complete night and day. And I think maybe mixed doubles actually shone a spotlight on it even more, because in mixed doubles, you need your more double skills in some ways, to be able to play. And I think we living in a bit of a dream world, and that these singles players think they can just turn up and be able to compete. Not compete, actually. Of course they can compete. They can compete with their tennis, but they think that if they wanted to, they could just come and win all the tournaments. It doesn't happen. They're allowed to every week, but they don't do it.
The problem with that idea is that if 100 of the top 100 singles players think that, and they all come and compete, is it still going to be so easy? Like, there's only 100 top 100 doubles players. Like, there's only 100 top 100 singles players.
No, well, it's not. But
if all of the guys who think it's so easy come in to do it, and it already is not easy, 100%. But everyone who's claiming it's easy from the outside come in and stroll in. I actually don't know how many of them think it's genuinely that easy. Maybe they think it's easier than the singles, but I mean, I definitely believe that the singles players holistically are better tennis players than doubles players. Like, I believe that for sure. And I think that if those guys spent as much time doing the specific works like that it takes to be a good doubles player, in terms of like service partner drills, and maybe the returns have to be a little bit more targeted. It can't be as deep and central. It has to be more like cross, or like pinning it on the line, or the lob return. Definitely those more specific things are very trained skills, and obviously studying and court positioning and stuff. But
they're trained skills, Jody. But they're also let me know what you think about this take. So it's like, use this example quite a bit. Cricket. I think you mentioned cricket earlier on in our chat. So there's different forms of cricket. Okay, now obviously you've got your 5-day test matches, you've got your 1-day internationals, you've got your 2020, you've even got your 100 now, which is even less than 2020
T10 and stuff. Yeah.
So different players will have different skill sets in the different forms of the game. None of them are necessarily deemed as a higher skill set than the other. It just is what it is. Some players are bigger. Some players are bigger hitters. Some players have better technique to be more defensive and maybe play the longer form of the game. I honestly believe within tennis it's the same. I think there's certain players that by just, and I know this from coaching, you can't coach anyone to be a great service partner or returner's partner. You can't.
Really?
You can't. No, you can't.
How come?
Because it's like anything. It's like you can't coach everyone to have a great serve. You can't coach everyone to have great returns. You can't coach everyone to have the best mental skills. You can't coach everyone to run 100 meters in under 10 seconds.
So it goes back to what I say, like, everyone has their thing.
Absolutely.
Everyone has their thing. Yeah.
There's an innate ability. So it's not just, you can always coach people to get better. And I don't think almost anybody reaches their potential in any of the bits. But let's take Jack Draper. And I love Jack to bits. He's a great dude, and he's an amazing tennis player. Jack Draper would always, in my opinion, have a weakness on the doubles court with his net play and his service partner He could get better at it, but it would
Yeah.
still be an area of exposure. Take Mate Pavic. Mate Pavic has an innate ability to be a great returner's partner. He feels it. He's got a presence about him. He feels it. It's a timing. It's a movement. He understands it. There's a flow to it. He probably hasn't had it coached that much. Yet for some reason in our sport, we almost degrade doubles players. And we all and there's almost this arrogance that the singles players believe, oh, well, if we wanted to do that, we would do that. But I don't believe that. I don't. I just think I think they're different skill sets.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that Yannick Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz wouldn't be a bloody great doubles team in lots of ways. However, they wouldn't clean up. And I also don't believe if they just did it for 6 or 12 months that they would clean up either, because I think the skill, and to take it back to cricket, it's like, why are some people better as a batter and better as a bowler? Like, I always thought when I was younger, well, why doesn't you just train to become an amazing bowler and an amazing batter?
Yeah.
But it doesn't quite work like that. And I just think there needs to be a little bit more respect for the elite skill that these guys show, really.
Yeah, I think I half agree. Because I think that to some extent, a lot of good level doubles is a lot of serving and returning, which I think that singles players do really well. But then when you get to the really fine details of it, then everyone's a good server, everyone's a good returner. So especially in doubles where guys are taking more cuts on second serves, they're going less like kick to make the ball. They're being more risky with the seconds, more like hitting slices, hitting spots that maybe in a singles match you'll be a little bit safer with a spot. In doubles, it's not as safe as it is. But I just think in general, the singles players have a better tennising ability that they currently use to develop their single skill set instead of using it to develop their double skill set. And because they don't spend that time, it'll be difficult for them to be really successful at the big events. I think to a certain extent, it will work, but then you come to the really top peers, and you have to beat several of them to win an event, and then it becomes really tough.
Yeah, well, sometimes tennis will beat doubles.
Exactly.
Sometimes, but however, if we use this whole concept, which I certainly use, which is the British tennis doubles system, which is you're trying to win 52% of points, and it's about ultimately tennis is a muscle relaxing sport. So it's about causing stress to your opponent, which is why the movement, the positioning, the play calling, all of these things are so important. It's not about trying to win every point. It's about softening certain areas. It's about, playing the long game and trusting that over the process of a match, a tournament, a month, a year, that you're winning 52% of the points. And that's where we see a lot of success with the doubles guys. And if you do that, it then is hard to sustainably beat someone just through tennis ability.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe there's more detail that goes into it than someone may think about, and that may be enough to help take you over the line.
Yeah, it's an interest. It is an interesting one, but I think probably the one that gets on my nerves is within the sport. There should be a lot more respect for everybody in the sport. I love singles players. I love singles players.
Agree.
I love doubles players. I love mixed doubles players. Like, anybody that has success deserves a hell of a lot of respect. And it's like, or anyone that's given it a go. And it just feels there's this kind of underpinning strangeness that we pick up, and we pick it up from other podcasts as well, where it's like almost at any opportunity, let's almost degrade the doubles players and make them. And I to go back to the original bit we talked about, the Yannick Sinner 1 against 2, to me that was the most degrading, ridiculous, disrespectful conversation, to even have the conversation. Anyway, this was supposed to be quick fire.
Sorry.
No, that's on me. If you could play one match again in your career, for the experience more than anything else, because it was an experience that you loved, which one would it be?
Morelos Challenger final this year. It was electric. It was very boring of a match because it's altitude, and it's myself, Alfredo Perez, Finn Reynolds, and James Watt. So all big servers, big guys, hitting the crap out of the ball, serving bombs. It probably was the most boring match up until the second set tiebreak. and then it was about who's going to hold their nerves the most. Because then I think we're up a set, second set tiebreak. Finn double faults back to back for us to go 3-2. So I'm like, okay, we're up a set, 3-2. Alfredo serving in the tiebreak. Then he double faults, so we go 3-all. We end up losing the second. I think we were down a mini break or two in the third. We came back and played the craziest point at 8-7. Alfredo had a crazy reaction. 8-all, I didn't know it at the time, but I hit a second serve. There was a let, apparently. They didn't call it. So then we go 9-8 to us, and Alfredo hits a good return for us to win 10-8. But like, it went from it being just a boring match, a lot of serving. We stole a break in the first, and then no breaks in the second, tie break in the second. Then it came about who's going to hold their nerves the most. And yeah, I definitely didn't expect at the beginning of the week to win a challenger. So I would say that's the most memorable match for me that like a full, not a stadium, but a full crowd, packed crowd, autographs after, throwing balls into the crowd. It's like what you see on TV is what I felt for the first time. So it was nice.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. The double scoring system, it's amazing how often that can happen, right? It's like, it really almost doesn't matter till the business end.
Yeah.
In so many matches, you just kind
true.
of to and fro. Okay, now it matters. Who's the funniest player on tour?
Zeke Clark, American, played for University of Illinois. He is really funny, I would say. He might have to take it, I think Zeke.
Roger or Rafa?
Roger.
Serena or Venus?
Serena.
Should you have a medical time out or not?
Yeah. Yes.
And what's one rule change you would have in tennis?
I don't know the solution to this one. So maybe your audience can help me. But I am so annoyed at footfalls. Like, so annoyed, because you don't know. It's not on the front of your mind. You're not thinking, like, no one goes into a point thinking, okay, let me step away from the line here so I don't footfault. Like, it's avoidable for sure. You step further from the baseline, but no one's trying to cheat on how far they step into the court. It's never happened. You think that's happened? You think people cheat and try to step into the court?
100%. It happens if it's
No
not being
way.
called.
Well, okay, so this is why I said I don't know the solution. So to me, it's like, I don't know if there should be like, I don't know the solution to it, but I've been called for footfalls, and I've seen footfalls be called, and it's like, why get involved there? The person obviously is not trying to cheat. It's like, no, it's not an inch. It's like he's touching the line, and it's a footfall, and all of a sudden it's a big point, and the referees have gotten involved in the match, and now the match is gone. So I don't know the answer to it, but I can't stand footfall calls. But I would love to know who cheats on footfalls. You know more than me.
Well, if you go to junior tennis where there's no umpires, there's quite a few times I've seen people just standing like
really
far inside the court.
I was dead wrong then. Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, I think wherever there's an advantage to be gained, people will try and gain the advantage. And I think for me, the football ones, it's a bit like offside in soccer and football. It's either offside or it's not. It's objective. Yeah. It's not subjective. I think the subjective ones I can understand. There's a frustration when people footfault. I've got players I coach that footfault, and it comes out in quite big moments. But it often comes out in big moments maybe because they're trying to get a little advantage to get to the net a bit quicker, subconsciously. Yeah, subconsciously. Exactly. So then my thing is like, dude, it's your accountability. Keep your feet behind the line, man.
It is, but it's I don't know. You're 100% correct, but I just
you're 6'6", aren't you? You don't need any more help.
Yeah, that's true. But I'm 6'5". I'm 6'4" 3/4 actually. But I get annoyed when I see it with other people too. So I just that call really bothers me. Really
you're 6'6" when you're footfault.
Okay, good point.
Last question. It's a question we always ask on the podcast, or have done for the last 150 episodes. It's our passing of the baton question, because the answer to this then leads to the responsibility to try and get this person on the podcast, and it's who should our next guest be on Control the Controllables.
Yeah, funny enough, we just started doing this recently, a few episodes ago. And it's not that easy. We don't lead into it like you do, where like I have the responsibility of bringing on the next guest. It's more like we leave that up to the imagination of the guest, and hopefully it works out. But I put some thoughts into this. I'm good friends with Cannon Kingsley. He played for Ohio State. I think he's like in the 400 or 500. I think he'd be a great a great guest for you. Actually, good guy, good friend of mine on tour, and I think he'd be a good guest for you. And I already talked to him, and he would be happy to do it. So yeah.
Great. Well, we'll be in touch on that. But just to say, look, a massive thank you. I've loved having you on. It's very clear to me to see why you guys are so endearing as well on your own podcast, and a big well done on everything that you're doing, and good luck on where that goes next. Thank you for what you're bringing to the tennis world, and then I'm looking forward to seeing you out there on tour. You've got an exciting period come up. Well done for a great 2025 so far. Finish strong, and hopefully I will see you out there sometime really soon. But a big
Yeah.
thank you for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, I had a great time. It's not very often where I get to go on other people's platforms and share my experiences, so it's kind of cool. But yeah, thanks so much, and shout out again to August for having me. I would definitely love to keep in touch and learn some more about what you have to offer on the double side. I know we talked a little bit off the recording, but yeah, thanks so much, and would love to learn a lot more. So I appreciate the invite.
Thanks, man. Good luck. So there we have it, Jody, a great guest, as I'm sure that you will all agree, and I think really nice for myself to have that kind of podcast to podcast conversation. Someone I think thinks quite similar, a much younger version of myself. But when I look at his doubles ranking and what he's doing on the doubles, the college career, I think there's lots of similarities. Different accents. The northeast of England's a little bit different. The accent from Antigua. But I can understand, I can understand where he's coming from. I love the conversations he has with the players, and I'm sure on his podcast, and I'm sure that's helping him as well. I've found it's helped me a lot as a coach, just to be able to be feeling comfortable in those conversations with big name players, with people in our sport, and it kind of clarifies things, I think, a little bit in your head. And I do think next time I speak to Jody, I'd like to ask him that, how he's found the podcast has almost maybe clarified a few things, made him feel a little bit more like he belongs. I think that would be really interesting. Obviously, going into the many different sides of life, and I've said it for a long time. Tennis players have time. And I sometimes think that dead time is the worst bit for players if they're not careful. We see it at the top end of the game. People travel with their families or, boyfriends, girlfriends, or friends, because that keeps them occupied. But at the lower levels, people don't have the money to do that. So it's like, how do you occupy your mind so you're not just thinking about the match? You're not just thinking about the loss the few days before. You're not just thinking about the issue you've got on your serve, but you're actually able to use your brain in other ways. And that's why I like tennis players studying as well, or learning a language or doing different things. So I love this idea now that we've got tennis players that are doing YouTube videos, they're doing podcasts. We have people that are out there kind of making content and putting their brains to use. And I do have this theory that I believe it can really help performance as well. I think there's probably a fine balance, of course, how you get that balance. You could go OTT with it, and then you get a little bit distracted. But certainly in Jody's case, I love the concept of why they set up their podcast. I love the work that they're doing. So a big shout out to him and his team on that. And I also really like what I see from him on the tennis court as well. And it's all very interesting. The second point that I just want to pick up before I let you guys go is also I do think in some of these smaller countries that there's often a chance to become a star at a lower ranking, and get sponsors and make a bit of a name for yourself within that country. Now, it fascinates me how you end up becoming a player that good when you don't have the opportunity, and it's incredible what Jody's done. We heard it with John Julian Roger as well, from Carousel, and it's people want to get behind that person when you're a bit of a big fish in a small pond, and it's great to see that people are doing that in Antigua behind Jody, and I'm sure he's gonna repay that. He didn't seem to feel the pressure from that. And I love that as well, that it's kind of not this heaviness that you've got to carry. And I do think that that's maybe one of the benefits of being from one of the smaller countries and as well. And I'll certainly be following Jody very well. We will get him on again. I'm sorry we haven't had lots of podcasts the last few weeks. My wife Vicky, you've not heard from in a while. She's had another operation. She's doing okay. We've had a lot going on. My travel is now finished for the year, getting back to sort of tennis academy and making sure that we're on top of everything with the academy, and also taking care of health side of things with the family. We will be moving into, we're going to have another guest coming up next week. Then we'll have our little end of year review of the podcast and a little bit of downtime before you know it, we're off to Australia again. I'll be heading to United Cup with Team Canada around December the 29th. So the season, before you know it, is upon us. We're going to try and enjoy a little bit of time at home with the family before then as well. But wherever you are in the world, I hope you're well. Thank you for your ongoing support of the podcast. Do get in touch if anyone's got any questions at all. And I hope you enjoyed this episode as well. And we will be back really, really soon. But until the next time, I'm Dan Kiernan, and we are Control the Controllables.